All around the world, one question keeps echoing through people's minds. Why does it seem like people are never satisfied when it comes to money? Why is it that the more wealth we accumulate, the more we thirst for even more? This is the question that many scientists, philosophers, and even ordinary people who suddenly gained or lost wealth have been trying to answer. Greed isn't simply a bad habit or a character flaw. It's a deep and complex emotion tied to our thinking, our environment, and the experiences that shaped who we are. And at the center of it all, money has become the symbol of success, luxury, and power. But when does wanting more become too much? When can a person be considered greedy? According to psychologists, there's a part of our brain called the reward system, particularly the nucleus accumbens. When we receive a reward, money, food, praise, or even social media, this part of the brain releases dopamine, a chemical that gives us a sense of pleasure. But as this system is triggered repeatedly, our satisfaction threshold also increases. Like a drug, money can create a cycle of repeated craving. The $200 that once brought joy will eventually feel insufficient. It must become $2,000, then $20,000. Because of this, we enter a never-ending cycle of chasing higher amounts, not because we need them to survive, but simply to feel that same dopamine rush. Greed is often rooted in fear, the fear of losing, of not being enough, of going hungry. Experts call this the scarcity mindset. A person who grew up in poverty might become extremely cautious or frugal, but it can also turn into greed. When your mindset constantly screams, "I might lose everything," no amount of money will ever feel secure. You'll always feel like you need more. Even if you have 3 houses, you'll want a 4th. Even with millions in the bank, you'll still worry it's not enough for the future. Another powerful driver of greed is the tendency to compare ourselves with others. In psychology, this is known as social comparison theory. When you see your neighbor with a new car or your classmate starting a successful business, you suddenly feel lacking. That's why even people with stable incomes might still feel like they're not progressing, because they measure their worth not based on their needs, but based on other people's achievements. In the world of social media, this becomes even more intense. With just one swipe, you see other people's lives happy, luxurious, successful, and suddenly you feel envious and greedy. In modern culture, money has become the measure of success and identity. Since childhood, we are taught, study hard so you can be rich. There's nothing wrong with this message, but with too much emphasis, many start to believe that a person's worth is defined by income, possessions, or lifestyle. This is why people are willing to sacrifice family, health, and values just to rise higher. Not because they are inherently bad, but because that's the system. They grew up in a system that equates value with wealth, rather than with virtue. Even in history and religion, greed has long been seen as dangerous. In Christianity, it's one of the 7 deadly sins, called greed or avarice. In Buddhism, excessive desire is one of the root causes of human suffering. Ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle also warned against the desire for material excess. In past empires and kingdoms, many wars began not for honor, but for the desire to conquer richer lands. Even today, economic and political decisions are often driven by the greed of a few, even if it comes at the cost of many. One of the most dangerous aspects of greed is the illusion of control. When you have a lot of money, you start feeling like you control everything: time, people, even life itself. But this is just an illusion. And with that illusion comes a growing ego. Empathy fades. A sense of superiority takes over. This is why many wealthy individuals seem disconnected from the struggles of others, not because they're evil, but because a wall has grown around their perspective. We also can't ignore that we live in a world that pushes us toward greed. Under capitalism, success is measured by profit, not by its effects on others. That's why a company may lay off workers, shut down factories, or harm the environment if it results in more money. Because of this, individuals start to imitate the same logic. I need more, even if others get hurt. Greed often stems from deep personal experiences, especially trauma linked to poverty. A person who grew up constantly hungry may become excessively hoarding or possessive in adulthood, not because they want to steal from others, but because a part of them fears returning to that life. This type of greed isn't born out of evil, but from pain of deprivation, abandonment, and having no control over life. So the question remains, if greed comes from the brain, culture, society, and experience, can it be changed? The answer is yes, but it's not easy. The first step is awareness. When a person realizes why they continue to chase money they don't actually need, they begin to find balance. From there, they can replace the question, how can I be rich? With something deeper. How can I be content? In the end, here's a gentle reminder. True wealth isn't measured by how much money is in your bank account, but by how deeply you understand yourself, how well you treat others, and most of all, how you protect your health. Because a truly rich person is someone who knows when to say, "This is enough." That's the invitation of this video, not to judge the greedy, but to understand them. And more importantly, to ask ourselves, do we desire because we truly need, or because we no longer know when to stop?